You are at the Church Answers podcast. I'm Thom Rainer. I'm joined by Jess Rainer, and we're always joined by Cheney and Associates, the accounting firm for the church. You hear me say it 1,000 times. I'll continue to say it. Make sure you are getting your bookkeeping, accounting, finances done right, well, and legally. That always helps within the church. Don't let that burden be upon you. Let Cheney and Associates do it for you. They're doing it for 1,100 churches. They know what they're doing. That's why we call them the accounting firm for the church. Incredible organization, cloud-based. They help small churches, large churches, church plants, mega churches. They got you covered. They are our friends, and they need to be your friends. Okay, Jess, you know that the topic of conversion evangelism is a topic that I have been talking about for many, many, many years. And I obviously have had little impact upon the American church because conversions continue to go down in the American church. So maybe one of the things I need to do is just shut up and let God work instead of thinking I got to help him in this process.
Yeah, I don't think you should bear the full burden of that responsibility, but I like the ownership.
Well, you look at what's taking place. The first pure evangelism book I wrote, you could go back to the first book, which was Evangelism in the 21st Century, but that was an edited book, and a lot of people contributed to that. But it's a book called Effective Evangelistic Churches. It was done just with the tribe of which I was a part then, the Southern Baptist Convention. If I recall correctly, I don't have the book in front of me. It has 576 churches in the study. That's something that I don't know why I still remember to this day. And y'all can always fact check me on it because I'm not looking at my book right now. And to this day, we've been talking about conversion growth. We've been talking about evangelism. So just to be clear, when we're talking about conversions, we're talking about reaching people for Christ. Specifically, we like to focus on in your community so that they can be assimilated and discipled in your church, in the community. Certainly, right. You can go overseas and see 1,000 or 1,500 people maybe won to Christ, but we're talking about Great Commission evangelism that doesn't just make conversions, but makes disciples as well. So, Jess, when we start looking at this, we're going to look at it from two different perspectives. We're going to be looking at it from the perspective of demographics, which is where we are right now, and then we're going to look at it from the perspective of priority. So, here's what we know: church members are older than the population. Not at your church, not at my church at Spring Hill. I mean, if Dan and I mean, we Dan and I are the senior citizens there. I think there may be one or two older than I am, but boy, it is a young church. You ever done the median age of that church?
You know, I haven't. That'd be good. We're actually spread pretty well demographically in terms of age. Okay. Yeah, I feel like we're pretty balanced. We do a good job of representing our community in terms of age. So yeah, you might think it's younger because you are on the older side. But when I look at it holistically, we've pretty good balance there.
Well, listen to this stat. The median age of a church member in the United States is 58 years old. The median U.S. age is 39 years old. So you begin to look at that data, and it says something in many different ways about evangelism. So let's look at this particular picture. You got a church, and I was talking to someone yesterday who said the median age of his church was 75. So, wow. I mean, I would have been in the youth group in that church. Just really.
No, don't give yourself that much credit. But
that's true. Anyway. I'm getting closer to the median than not. So we're looking at that age, and he said, Thom, this is what happens in my church. We've got a young community, and a young community member comes in, and they look at the people in my church, and they said, nope, not for me. Right. What do you hear going on in the mind of that church member, that guest who comes in and says, no, not for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's tough because, you know, there's a place for every single church. Every single church has purpose. Every single church has opportunity in front of them. But when you look at from a community standpoint, when a church does not at least have some form of representation of the community at large, that's a major obstacle. It's going to be hard for people who are not in that stage of life to feel like they can belong in that. So demographically, that's a challenge. You talk about the median age of a church. I'm kind of curious, and you may not know this, but what's the median age of a pastor?
Oh, I do know that it's about 60 now.
Okay.
It's between 58 and 60. It's between 59 and 60 years old. It's getting close to 60.
So even on top of the aging of the church, you're also seeing the church member. You're seeing the aging of the church pastor as well. And obviously, I'd correlation causation. You could make a case either way for that. But it's a challenge. It's at least at the very minimum should be an eye opening moment to be able to recognize that. And I think a lot of churches can't even recognize that. They have a hard time seeing it. But that's the first step, is seeing we do have a demographic challenge that is affecting our ability to actually reach people for Christ.
And so the question becomes, what is cause and effect? Is the cause that they're not reaching people that they're too old and they're not reflecting the community, or did it get that way because they weren't reaching people in the beginning and therefore they aged out because there were no new people coming in? I think it's more the latter, quite frankly. I don't think you just all of a sudden become an old congregation, a congregation of old people. I think that you stop reaching people, and of course there are a lot of reasons for that. I remember, Jess William Rayner, I remember when you asked me to go speak at a church where your church was thinking about making it another campus of your church.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into that church and they said, "Oh, Thom Rayner's coming. We're going to have all these." It was a total disaster. And again, when the handful of people that we saw there, I didn't see, most of them seemed older than I am, even at the time I was there.
They were. Yeah. That the reality of the widening gap between the ages of the community and the age of the church is very real. And I think we've seen this, even though the age gap hasn't really necessarily increased dramatically over the past 5, 6, 7 years. I think the generational and cultural gap has increased significantly as well. So you're talking about why are conversions down? Well, there's a purely demographic element of that. You can look at the data, but I think when you look even a layer deeper, I think it's harder. Even me, who's under the median age, is still struggling with, how do I reach the community? How do I reach my peers? Because there's just been this just dramatically different shift in culture. Technology has just completely sped this up.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a dad that now has almost 2 teenagers, it is a completely different language they speak. And so there has to be this awareness of being intentional about reaching the community, and no matter what age it is. But I think the cultural shift has made this even a bigger problem within the demographic shift. And so why are conversions down so low? Would the average age, you said 58, 59 is the average church member, are they willing to do the work, not to just overcome the age gap, but to overcome the generational and cultural gap as well? To me, that's more of the underlying issue in itself rather than just the age.
I totally agree. And here's another thing that we found out, Jess. This research is so new. I just saw the data last night as of the recording of this. Okay. And I'm not about to start giving away the research, but I will tell you one of the broad themes in this. Church members are more skeptical and down on the church, have a more negative perspective than a totally unchurched person does. By far. It's not even close, by far. One example, just this is one, and then I'm going to get off this because there's a lot of research yet to be done. When you ask the question, are churches in America irrelevant today? 40% of church members, active church members, say yes. 9% of the unchurched say yes.
Wow.
So internally, we've got our own self-perception problem. And if we're not excited about our church, it's going to be tough to be reaching those outside the church when there are people saying, I'm really interested in what you have to offer. Will you tell me about it?
Yeah.
Both the gospel and invitations. More on that to come, though.
Yeah. No, I just think like that's a doctor saying he can't help people. Right. It's you have everything you need. Like, well, I'm not really worth it anymore. It's like, no, you got it. You need to go, help people. That's fascinating.
Self-perception issue. book coming out on it in 2025, research coming out on it this summer in 2024. So as you're listening to this, it may be close to be getting out anyway, because this is a late June release, or we're in June anyway. So anyway, we're going to talk more about conversions, Jess. We're going to come back in the next episode, and we're going to start talking about priorities in conversions. And we'll see why that might be affecting why we're down. So we got a lot of information to share. That's why we're breaking this up into 2 episodes. This has been the Church Answers podcast with Jess Rayner and Thom Rayner. And as always, thank you, Cheney and Associates. They are the accounting firm for the church. Come back for the next episode. We got some good stuff.